At 85 years old, gospel icon Shirley Caesar has finally chosen to speak openly. What she has revealed confirms what many long suspected. Beyond the commanding voice, the Grammy Awards, and the pulpit presence lies a deeply personal story she kept private for decades. Why did she remain silent for so long? What private struggles did she endure away from the public eye? And how did those experiences shape the woman the world thought it already knew? Stay with us, because once you hear what Shirley Caesar has finally confessed, your view of her will never be the same. This is the truth people have been waiting to hear. Shirley Caesar's story begins far from fame. She was born not into recognition, but into faith, hardship, and resilience. On October 13, 1938, in Durham, North Carolina, she entered the world as the 10th of 13 children. Her childhood home echoed with gospel songs, and prayer filled the air daily. Her father, James Caesar, spent his weekdays working long hours as a tobacco laborer, but on Sundays he became a traveling preacher, carrying messages of hope from church to church. For the Caesar family, music and ministry were not hobbies, they were the foundation of daily life. Heartbreak came early. When Shirley was only 7 years old, her father died, leaving a deep wound in the family. The loss cut especially hard. Shirley would later recall that they had very little materially, but their faith sustained them. "We had Jesus," she once said, and somehow that was enough. Her mother, Shirley Caesar, took on the full burden of raising the family. She was both strong and gentle, cooking meals, cleaning homes, and still making time to sing. She urged her children to channel their pain into music, believing it could heal the broken places life left behind. At just 8 years old, Shirley sang her first solo in church. From the moment her voice rang out, something changed. It wasn't merely powerful, it stirred emotions. Her singing carried sorrow, hope, and a sense of divine purpose. Shirley would later explain it simply: she didn't choose gospel music chose her. From that moment forward, her path seemed unmistakable, even though the journey ahead was only beginning. By the age of 10, Shirley Caesar was already drawing attention across North Carolina. She wasn't just performing, she was ministering through song, even before fully understanding the weight of that calling. Invitations from churches poured in. People were captivated by the young girl with a voice far beyond her years. Her sound was raw, emotional, and unmistakably unique. Listeners could hear the grief of losing her father, the hope her mother worked tirelessly to instill, and a fire that felt divinely inspired. It was something that couldn't be taught. One local pastor famously remarked that it seemed as though the Spirit itself had taken control of her voice. Yet life away from the spotlight remained difficult. The family still struggled financially. Some days there was little food, and some nights the house had no heat. Still, Shirley sang. Music wasn't just her dream, it was her refuge. Her mother kept the children grounded, stressing the importance of education alongside faith. Shirley learned to balance schoolwork with her growing musical responsibilities, never forgetting where she came from. Through every hardship, she continued forward, not in pursuit of fame, but in search of healing. Music, she later said, was how she spoke to God, and how God responded. That deep sense of calling would soon place her in the national spotlight and lead her to one of the most influential gospel groups in history. At only 18 years old, Shirley made a life-altering decision. She joined the Caravans, one of America's most revered gospel groups. This was no ordinary ensemble, it was a spiritual force led by legends such as Albertina Walker and James Cleveland. Known for igniting churches with their harmonies and testimonies, the Caravans set the standard for gospel excellence. The opportunity was extraordinary, but it came with pressure. Shirley later admitted she had to prove herself. These were not just singers, they were ministers through music. Life on the road was exhausting, filled with endless bus rides, city-to-city travel, and sometimes multiple performances in a single day. Sleep was scarce, but Shirley absorbed every lesson. Each performance strengthened her sense of purpose. Songs like Sweeping Through the City and I'm Not Tired Yet showcased her remarkable voice, both powerful and tender, filled with passion and praise. Audiences responded immediately. Though the pace was demanding, the growth was undeniable. Shirley began to see herself not just as a vocalist, but as a leader with a message. She was no longer simply a girl from Durham, she was a woman carrying a divine responsibility. As she would later say, God had given her more than a gift, He had given her an obligation. Still, even the strongest journeys require change. Shirley felt a pull toward something unknown, a calling that demanded courage. In 1966, she stunned the gospel world by leaving the Caravans after nearly a decade. Walking away from the most celebrated gospel group of the era meant abandoning security, familiarity, and guaranteed audiences to step into uncertainty as a solo artist. The decision shocked many. At a time when female gospel singers rarely ventured out alone, her move seemed bold, even defiant. People questioned her choice. Why leave something so successful? The Caravans were already legendary, and Shirley had become one of their brightest stars. But inside, she felt a sacred urgency, not ambition, but obedience. She believed God was calling her to stand alone, and she felt compelled to listen. Going solo was anything but glamorous. There were no promises, no major contracts, and no assurance that audiences would follow her. Doubt surrounded her. Many wondered whether she could survive without the Caravan's name behind her. But Shirley wasn't seeking validation, she was pursuing purpose. Her first solo album, My Testimony, was far more than music. It was her life story set to song. It reflected the loss of her father, years of poverty, countless church performances, and the heavy responsibility of a calling larger than herself. Every song was delivered with raw honesty, and listeners immediately felt it. Shirley didn't simply sing, she testified. The emotion in her voice came from lived experience, heartbreak, and unwavering faith. Even when venues were small and payments were modest, her influence continued to grow. Audiences listened closely. Congregations wept. Pastors invited her back again and again. Slowly, even critics who once doubted her began to change their minds. "I don't need a spotlight," Shirley once said in a radio interview. "I just need a microphone and the truth." With those words, Shirley's ascent began. Her voice carried far beyond church walls, echoing through cities and small towns alike. Records sold quickly, sermons transformed into melodies, and those melodies sparked movements. It didn't take long before she was no longer seen as just a solo singer. She became a presence, a power. On stage, she poured out everything, stomping, shouting, sweating, weeping. Every sound came straight from her spirit, every lyric spoken as if directly to God. Soon, even people far removed from the church began to take notice. Without trying, Shirley Caesar was tearing down barriers. She never set out to chase fame or cross into the mainstream. Stardom wasn't the goal. Obedience was. She simply followed the calling placed inside her. Yet that faithfulness pushed her further than she ever imagined. After proving she could stand on her own, Shirley stepped into territory few gospel artists dared to enter. She crossed over. She shared stages with legends, appeared in major films, and showed the world that gospel music had no boundaries. Her collaborations reached far beyond the pulpit, making it clear her voice was never meant to be confined to one space. It carried too much power to stay inside church walls. In the years following her solo breakthrough, Shirley continued to defy expectations. She worked alongside icons outside traditional gospel circles. Early on, the great Mahalia Jackson recognized her fire, calling her an unstoppable force. But it was Shirley's later collaborations, especially with artists like Whitney Houston, that introduced her to an entirely new generation. Their performance of his All Over Me for the Preacher's Wife soundtrack reached millions. It wasn't just another gospel track, it was a cultural moment. It proved that faith-filled music could thrive in the mainstream. Shirley's voice delivered more than melody, it carried authority and strength. Whitney Houston once said her voice carried power. Shirley became more than a singer. She emerged as a representative of gospel music itself, appearing on television, sharing stages with pop and soul stars, and preaching wherever she went. She never diluted her message, even as the world around her evolved. Her music began appearing in films, award shows, and on radio charts. Each appearance shattered another unspoken rule. Gospel music wasn't supposed to cross over, but Shirley never waited for approval. She simply sang what was true. I wasn't trying to fit in, she explained. I was trying to reach out. As the world embraced her, a title followed, one she never sought, but fully earned. She became known as the First Lady of Gospel. By her 40s, the gospel community had officially crowned her with that honor. It wasn't just her many awards or her unmatched voice that set her apart. It was her presence, the grace she carried into a room and the purpose she carried onto a stage. Over her lifetime, Shirley released more than 40 albums, each one a sermon set to music. Songs like No Charge, Jesus, I Love Calling Your Name, and Hold My Mule went beyond chart success. They became woven into everyday life. Her gift was the ability to connect deep spiritual truths to real human experience, making her music feel sacred yet relatable. She never chased trends or applause. She followed conviction. That commitment earned her 12 Grammy Awards and a place in the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Still, she believed the greatest reward was hearing someone say, "Your song helped me survive." "I never sang for fame," she once said. "I sang to be faithful." That faithfulness resonated far beyond her fan base. Artists from soul, R&B, and pop admired her, not just for her talent, but for her character. While the music industry tried to limit gospel's reach, Shirley expanded it. She made room for joy, sorrow, justice, and laughter within the genre. Gospel became a movement. Yet even as the spotlight followed her, her heart remained rooted in ministry. And soon, she would share that calling with the man who stood beside her. In 1983, Shirley married Bishop Harold Williams, a man who matched her passion for God. Their relationship wasn't built on fame, but on faith and service. As leader of Mount Calvary Holy Church of America, Bishop Williams wasn't just her husband, he was her partner in purpose. Together, they formed a powerful union. She preached through song, he preached from the pulpit. Their ministry reached far beyond music. "We weren't just married," Shirley said. "We were united in mission." Their bond was evident everywhere, during services, at community events, and in private moments. They prayed together, supported one another, and shared the weight of their calling. For Shirley, it was the first time she didn't have to carry everything alone. Then, life tested her once more. In 2014, after more than 3 decades together, Bishop Williams passed away. The loss was devastating. "I lost my soulmate," she said. "But I didn't lose my purpose." Even in mourning, Shirley remained steadfast. Through tears, she continued to preach, sing, and serve. She honored her husband by carrying forward the work they began together. Though marriage gave her stability, service gave her strength to keep going. For Shirley Caesar, gospel was never just music, it was a way of life. After decades of success, she felt called to give back beyond the stage. She founded the Shirley Caesar Outreach Ministries, providing food, clothing, and education to those in need. She served the elderly, the homeless, and struggling families with open hands and an open heart. "Ministry isn't just what you say," she explained. "It's what you do when no one is watching." She didn't delegate compassion, she lived it. Shirley showed up, prayed with strangers, fed the hungry, and comforted the broken. Her church became more than a place of worship, it became a sanctuary for survival. People came not only to hear her sing or preach, but to be acknowledged, nourished, and loved. At the same time, Shirley used her voice to speak boldly about poverty, racial injustice, and faith in difficult times. She never avoided hard truths, and her message never wavered. Faith was never meant to be passive. It was meant to inspire action. Shirley Caesar's legacy had grown beyond awards and gold records. It was now rooted in compassion, service, and purpose. Just when it seemed she had reached a new level of spiritual fulfillment, an unexpected turn pushed her into the center of the internet's attention, bringing with it both fame and backlash. In 2016, Shirley Caesar's voice resurfaced in an entirely different way. This time, it wasn't echoing through a church sanctuary or ringing out on a Grammy stage. Instead, it appeared in a viral meme. A recording from her passionate sermon, "Hold My Mule," was transformed into a Thanksgiving-themed dance remix. Almost overnight, Shirley became a trending topic online. A younger generation, many unfamiliar with her music or ministry, shared the clip, laughed along, and danced to the now iconic line, "I've got beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes." The remix was playful, creative, and impossible to ignore. At first, Shirley welcomed the attention. She smiled and said that if it helped people hear the word, then she was fine with it being played. But the celebration didn't last long. Criticism soon followed. Some traditional gospel leaders felt the remix disrespected the sacred meaning of the sermon, accusing it of turning ministry into mockery. Without seeking it, Shirley found herself at the center of a cultural storm. What began as joy quickly became a debate about the limits of gospel's place in popular culture. Shirley made her intentions clear. Fame was never the goal. Her only desire was for people to feel something genuine. While the meme introduced her to a global audience, it also forced her to reflect on how faith is communicated in the digital age. She wrestled with the fine line between spreading the message and allowing it to be exploited. After a lifetime spent guarding the integrity of her calling, that distinction mattered deeply to her. True to her nature, Shirley didn't let the controversy derail her. She adapted, moved forward, and kept her focus intact. Internet attention is fleeting. One week it celebrates you, the next it moves on, but her purpose remained steady. Still, beneath the laughter and viral clips were struggles the public rarely noticed. Behind the success and applause was a woman who had endured deep pain. Fame was never her pursuit, yet it came with a heavy cost. Years of constant touring strained her health. Long nights, endless travel, and relentless schedules pushed her body and spirit to their limits. More than once, she found herself emotionally exhausted. She once admitted that she had shed more tears in green rooms than she ever did at home. The loss of her father at a young age left a wound that never fully healed. Later, the death of her husband reopened a grief she believed had long settled. As one of gospel music's most recognizable faces, people expected unwavering strength, constant smiles, and unshakable faith. But Shirley was human. There were moments she wanted to walk away. Nights when she questioned why God had chosen her. Though she carried sorrow, loneliness, and fatigue, she rarely revealed it. Audiences saw the lights, the sequins, and the stage. What they didn't see was the emotional weight she carried each time she stepped into the spotlight. Yet she continued. Because for Shirley, praise was never about putting on a performance. It was about endurance. She once said she didn't sing because she felt strong, she sang to remind herself that she was. That quiet resilience, unseen by most, became one of her greatest strengths. Despite widespread recognition, Shirley Caesar has always protected her personal life. She avoided gossip, refused to air her struggles on talk shows, and never chased headlines. Even at the height of her fame, she remained deeply private. But privacy didn't mean an absence of pain. Away from the cameras and choir robes, Shirley faced silent battles. One of the most personal was her marriage without children. Though she and Bishop Harold Williams shared a profound spiritual bond, they never had children together. They devoted themselves fully to their church and community, yet Shirley later admitted there were moments of emptiness. She often said she had spiritual children across the world, but acknowledged that sometimes the quiet of home was deeply felt. There were other hardships too, family illnesses, personal losses, and friendships that slowly faded. None of these became part of her public narrative. She believed in guarding her peace. Still, the emotional toll was undeniable. As time passed, the spotlight shifted. New artists emerged, trends changed, and social media reshaped the industry. Even someone as legendary as Shirley experienced moments of feeling overlooked. But her dignity never wavered. She carried herself with grace, refusing to chase youth or reinvent herself for relevance. Instead, she embraced aging as a blessing and leaned further into her faith. She once said that while some people shout on stage, she shouts in silence, allowing God to fight battles no one else sees. And quietly, without fanfare, she began passing the torch. Her focus turned toward mentorship, guiding the next generation with patience and love rather than spectacle. If gospel music has a godmother, it is Shirley Caesar. Over the past 2 decades, she shifted from being center stage to being a guiding presence behind the scenes. Artists like Yolanda Adams, Tasha Cobbs, and LaAndrea Johnson have all spoken of her influence. Shirley didn't just open doors, she stood there until others felt confident enough to walk through. Tasha Cobbs once shared that Shirley didn't teach her how to be famous, but how to remain grounded. Shirley emphasized humility over hype and service over spotlight. Many artists recall receiving phone calls, handwritten notes, or personal encouragement from her, gentle reminders to stay connected to God rather than chasing charts. She attended events not for recognition, but to support emerging voices. When Shirley entered a room, her presence was undeniable, not only because of who she was, but because of what she represented. As music evolved with faster tempos and viral moments, she adapted while also issuing warnings. She reminded younger artists that the gift must always honor the giver. She once told a young singer backstage that she wasn't there to compete, but to cover them. Her mentorship was never flashy, but it was sincere. In an industry often driven by ego, Shirley Caesar stood apart as a leader who lifted others while continuing her own journey. Yet even as she poured into the next generation, something within her remained unspoken. A truth she had carried quietly for decades. Fans, peers, and critics had long wondered what burdens she bore beneath her composed exterior. What had she endured in silence? What stories remained untold? Through it all, she lived with grace, faith, and remarkable strength, leaving the world to finally ask what Shirley Caesar had truly been carrying all along. From time to time, something in her expression or a long pause during an interview suggested there was more she wasn't saying. Now, at 85, Shirley is finally opening up. What she's sharing confirms what many have suspected for years, that her journey was far more difficult, lonely, and demanding than most people ever realized. As she rose to gospel stardom, the pressure didn't only come from the music industry, but from the church as well. She was expected to be flawless, never stumble, always wear the robe of perfection. Even when she was falling apart inside, she admitted, there were moments she wanted to cry out, but instead, she smiled, because she represented faith to the world. She stayed quiet through personal betrayals. She endured exhaustion and burnout without complaint. She remained silent when others twisted her story or misunderstood her intentions. Not because she lacked strength, but because she believed her suffering served a greater purpose. Now, entering a new chapter of life, Shirley no longer wants to bear that weight alone. Honesty brings healing, she says, and she hopes her truth gives others permission to speak theirs. This isn't a scandal, it's freedom. It's the moment when the legend steps aside and the woman steps forward, stronger than ever. When Shirley Caesar finally opened her heart, the world didn't lose a gospel icon, it gained a deeper understanding of her. Is this the final chapter, or the beginning of something new? While most people at 85 are slowing down, Shirley Caesar is still preaching, still singing, still standing firm. She's released new music and continues to preach with the same spiritual fire that ignited her faith as a child. Though her voice has aged, it still carries power, clarity, and a force that cuts through the noise and reaches straight into the soul. Aging, she says, isn't a limitation, it's a microphone. God simply turned the volume up. She refuses to call this the end. Instead, she calls it her most truthful season. She's no longer chasing approval or opportunity, she's already walked through doors once said to be closed forever. Now, she chooses which ones to open. Each day is another chance to pass on what life has taught her, that faith is a lifelong journey, not a finish line, that pain can hold purpose, and that it's never too late to speak your truth. She doesn't know what lies ahead, but she's not afraid. She greets it with open arms, an open Bible, and yes, an open microphone. If this truly is her final act, it won't be quiet or sorrowful, it will be victorious. And if it's simply another beginning, that wouldn't surprise anyone who truly knows her. In the end, Shirley Caesar leaves behind far more than trophies or hit records. Her legacy is woven into the soul of gospel music and engraved in the hearts of millions. She didn't just sing about God, she lived as though he was listening. Every lyric, every sermon, every prayer was filled with authenticity. She transformed gospel music into something deeply personal, not just songs for church, but hope for the broken, strength for the weary, and light for the searching. She redefined what it meant to be a gospel artist, not by how high she rose, but by how faithfully she walked. Her ministries continue to feed, clothe, and uplift communities. Her sermons still echo through centuries. Her music still moves people to tears. And more than anything, her life story continues to give others courage. Shirley once said that if her life could remind even one person they weren't alone, then she had fulfilled her purpose, and she did, with grace, truth, and a voice that refused to be silenced. Whether she's stepping back or stepping forward, depending on how you see it, her influence remains firm and undeniable. She is Shirley Caesar, the First Lady of Gospel, the survivor, the storm, the song, and now, at last, the teller of her own truth. Her story is one of resilience, restraint, and unwavering faith. From gospel royalty to raw revelation, she has finally spoken. If this story moved you, please like the video, subscribe for more, and share which part resonated with you the most. Thank you for watching and honoring her legacy.